Anyone who believes in indefinite growth on a physically finite planet is either mad or an economist.
We don't want to focus politics on a notion that involves the rejection of principles around which a large majority of our fellow citizens organize their lives.
We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think.
How many of you know what this is? This graph, specifically this point on this graph, is the point at which Facebook knows that you have begun your next relationship. Whether or not you've explicitly told Facebook that you've begun your next relationship by setting your relationship status. So how does Facebook know this? They know because of these little black dots. Those little black dots are the number of timeline posts between you and another person. And the horizontal axis is days, specifically 100 days leading up to when your relationship status actually changes. So what interests me about this is, when does Facebook know that you're going to start a new relationship within those 100 days? Is it possibly before you know? And perhaps a more important question, who owns this intelligence? Who owns this data? Now, Facebook released this study as part of a blog post, and there were comments on it, and somebody asked this question: is this anonymized data available? And Facebook said, we're sorry, we don't even release anonymized data. It's strictly for our use. So the answer to who owns this data, of course, here is Facebook. So I don't know if you've been following Facebook at all recently, but they just bought a messaging application called WhatsApp for $19 billion. Why was WhatsApp worth $19 billion to Facebook? Well, it's quite simple. What they bought were the mobile phone numbers of 450 million people, but more importantly, the right to eavesdrop on all of their future conversations, should they desire. So you might say, well, okay, so what? Right, Aral, it's fine, it's a product, if we don't like it, we don't have to use it, it's not like these things are essential. Well, I beg to differ. To understand why this is so important, we have to evaluate how our relationship to technology has evolved over the last 30 to 40 years. Now, computers once were these external, cold, impersonal devices that filled up entire rooms, and we had to actually drive to one if we wanted to use it. Today, that couldn't be further from the truth. We wear them on our persons. They can't get more personal than that. We wake up with our mobile phones, we go to bed with our mobile phones. That's very personal. Whereas computers once were disconnected from the world around them, disconnected from one another, and unaware of the world itself. Today, they are always on. They're always seeing. They're always hearing. They have a plethora of sensors by which they can feel the world around them and are aware of the world around them. So today, it's not too much of a stretch to say that we are cyborgs. Not in that we actually embed ourselves with technology necessarily, but in that we extend our biological capabilities via technologies. These technologies are what we use to both experience and manipulate the world around ourselves. And whether or not these technologies work well or not, well, that's really important because they are essential to our lives. And when they work well, they empower us. When they don't work so well, they enfeeble us. So the question then becomes, who owns these tools? And today, that answer is a handful of companies: Apple, Facebook, Google, Twitter. And what's common with these companies is that they're all closed silos. And a subset of these companies also share a business model, the business model of free. So what? Free's fine. I love free, right? What could possibly be wrong with free? Well, if some of you are thinking this way, you're going to love this new startup that I'm going to tell you about right now. It's called Snail Mail. and I am very excited about snail mail because we have solved a very important problem. We have solved the problem of real mail. That's right. Snail mail will give you free real mail forever. You can send as many letters as you want, as many packages as you want, to as many people as you want around the world, free forever. Who thinks this is a great idea? Who would use this? Who would use snail mail? Some of you feel it coming, right? They're like, there's a catch here. Well, there is a catch. And the catch is that we do read your letters. We do open and we do read them, but we only do this so that we can give you helpful hints and suggestions based on what we've read. It may be correct or not. We're trying to understand what you're saying. But don't worry, because we will put all of this back in the envelope, and you wouldn't even know that we were here. So who'd still use this? There's usually one. There we go. There's always one person. It's free. I'll use it. For the rest of you, you use Gmail, right? Now, there may not be a person there reading each one of your letters, but there is an algorithm. There is a computer. So that's snail mail. That's snailmail.com. Do tell your friends. I think it's going to be big. I'm really excited about this. So why does Google do this? Are they evil? Is there a conspiracy theory? No. You don't need conspiracy theories when you have the simplicity of business models. It is simply their business model to monetize data. Therefore, just like the mutant plant from outer space from the musical Little Shop of Horrors, Audrey 2, who starts out as a little sapling that needs just drops of blood and then ends up eating whole people, Google needs your data to grow. It's just their business model. And how do they get your data? Via a variety of ways. One being services. So remember that Google also started out as a sapling, right? They just started out as a search engine. That's all they did, right? They weren't even tracking you back then. They stumbled onto their business model. But today's Google is a very different beast. It's a plethora of services. Do you want a place to put all of your files? Please put them on Google Drive. Of course, Google will look through all of your files to try and understand you better, to try and get to know you better. Do you have pictures that you've taken? Put them on Picasa. Of course, Google will be analyzing who's in those pictures to, again, try and get to know you better. And the same with, if you want to keep in touch with your friends, use Google+. They have your social graph. Use Google Hangouts and Google Chat, and they can see what you're saying to your friends. We mentioned Google Mail at the beginning. Now, with Google Mail, some of you might also say, well, you know, Aral, it's our decision, right? You know, I'm not hurting anyone else here. I can choose to accept the terms of this relationship that Google presents for me and use it. But it's not exactly that. Because take Google Mail, right? You might say, I'm okay with Google knowing the contents of the letters that I write, right? The emails that I write. What about the people who email you? Now, if you're using a custom domain, they may not even know that Google is going to be reading what they've written. They've never given consent for that. So in that way, it's a lot like smoking and secondhand cigarette smoke. It also affects other people. So how else do they get data? Well, they have games. ReCAPTCHA. Who's used a ReCAPTCHA on a forum, on an online forum here? Yeah, some of you? Okay, awesome. And it's great, right? It's very useful. It protects the form, but there are 2 words, and they're very open about it. They say, you know, help us to read the books that we've digitized by telling us what this second word that we don't know is, and we know the first word so that we can prove that you're human and we can protect this form that way. That's nice. Sometimes they have actual games. Ingress is a free game from Google that you can download and you can play. And the way you play it is you run around town and try to find monuments and then hack into them with this game. And what you're really doing, though, as you're playing this fun, free game, is you're giving Google very hard to come by data on pedestrian walking patterns. So when I think of this, I think of rats in a maze, as we would in a laboratory. Let's just put them out there, see what they do, and study them, right? But okay, so maybe Google's services are not for you, and you can say, I'm not going to use this. And for a company that needs your data, they've lost, right, at that point. So they can't let it stop there. What's the next step? We can give you devices. We can give you beautiful, beautiful devices like these Nexus phones. Have you seen them? They're really great experience. They really are. Google understands user experience now. And they're half the price of an iPhone. How amazing is that? I mean, does Google have twice the economies of scale of Apple? You know, Tim Cook is meant to be a supply chain guy. Is he asleep at the helm? No. These are subsidized devices. What these are beautiful, gorgeous experiences, beautiful, gorgeous data entry devices that Google says, here, take these and give us your data, right? The same with their tablets, the same with their Chromebooks. What they've done here is they've made your sign-in to your device your Google username and password. So at that point, it doesn't matter what service you use, they will still get some data, and that's how they make money. So it makes perfect sense. And they're not, again, doing this because there's some conspiracy, but it is the goal of experience design, as I see it, to create the experience machine. Now, this is a theoretical device that I've come up with to explain where we want to be ideally. The experience machine is a machine that knows everything about the world, it knows everything about you, and it can read your mind. If we could get to this point, we could all go home as designers, right? So everything about you, we know how Google tries to get that information via its services, devices. Read your mind, that is what the ultimate aim is as designers. We want to know what you want to do before you want to know it. In fact, Amit Singhal, who is head of search at Google, said, I want my search engine to be the expert who knows me the best. It needs to know you so well that sometimes you don't need to ask it the next question.